Hello. Here's something nobody tells you. Hearing changes don't first damage your ears. They slowly change how you see yourself. You start doubting your focus, your intelligence, even your personality, when the real issue is something else entirely. If you've ever thought, maybe it's just me, or I'm getting old, that's normal. You're not alone. And that belief is exactly what keeps so many people stuck for years. In this video, I want to help you understand when reduced hearing stops being a small inconvenience and becomes something deeper, something emotional and relational. And more importantly, why noticing it early truly changes everything. I've lived this from the inside, and I've watched it happen to hundreds of others. This is where the real shift begins. Imagine a simple moment: a family meal, a club meeting, time with your grandchildren. People are talking, laughing, stories are flowing, and you're there. You smile, you nod, you follow along, at least on the surface. But inside, something feels slightly off. You miss a word here and there. You piece things together. You guess. You tell yourself it's fine. And you might wonder quietly, at what point did this start to feel harder than before? For most people, the first real impact of hearing changes isn't about sound at all. It's about confidence. It's that tiny hesitation before answering. That moment where you're not quite sure you caught everything, but you respond anyway. You don't want to slow things down. You don't want to ask again. So you adapt. You fill in the blanks. You smile and move on. These moments seem harmless, but each one takes a small toll. Little by little, they chip away at how capable and present you feel. You may not notice it right away, but the effort adds up. The mental load grows, and fatigue starts to appear, even after conversations that used to feel easy. This isn't about volume, it's about presence, about feeling fully there, without constantly working in the background. When that confidence begins to weaken, something else happens almost automatically. Your mind looks for an explanation. Later, when you're alone, you replay the moment. Did I miss something important? Was I distracted? Why didn't I follow that part? And slowly, the question shifts. It's no longer, did I hear that clearly? It becomes, is something wrong with me? You might start doubting your attention, your sharpness, your ability to keep up. This self doubt can be heavy. It often comes with guilt or even a quiet sense of shame. You don't want to be seen as slow. You don't want to be a burden. So you try harder. You focus more. You push through. But this is a trap because the problem was never your intelligence or your effort. It was a bad diagnosis from the start. And when you turn the problem inward, your sense of personal safety begins to erode. You don't trust yourself the way you used to. That inner doubt doesn't stay inside for long. It starts to affect your relationships, even if no one talks about it. Your partner repeats things more often. Sometimes their tone changes without meaning to. Your children simplify their sentences, or they stop explaining stories in detail. Friends may speak faster with each other, assuming you're following. None of this comes from a lack of love, but it creates small frictions, tiny misunderstandings, little moments of tension that don't get named. And because nothing is clearly said, the discomfort grows quietly. The emotional weight starts being carried by the relationships themselves. Conversations lose their flow. Spontaneity fades. You may feel a slight distance, even when everyone is trying their best. If this resonates with you so far, you're not alone. I'd really like you to tell me in the comments if you recognize yourself in these situations. Even a simple, yes, this sounds familiar, is enough. Reading your experiences helps others feel less alone too. When relationships start feeling tense, most people don't confront the issue head on. Instead, a very human strategy appears. You step back, you protect yourself, you decline certain invitations, you choose the quiet corner at restaurants, you sit where it feels easier to follow. You might say you're tired or that you're not in the mood, and sometimes that's partly true. In the moment, it feels like relief. Less effort, less risk. Your dignity stays intact. But later, something else shows up, a sense of emptiness, a feeling that you're missing out, even though you chose not to go. What started as protection slowly becomes a habit, and habits, over time, can turn into identities. You may begin to see yourself as someone who prefers staying home, someone who doesn't enjoy group settings anymore, even if that wasn't true before. This is where the invisible shift happens. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly. One day, you realize you're present physically, but not fully inside the moment. You're there, but you're not really part of it. And that's when reduced hearing stops being about sound. It becomes about belonging, about your place in the group, in the family, in the room. The fear underneath is rarely about hearing less. It's about becoming invisible, about losing a role that matters to you as a partner, a parent, a grandparent, a friend. Your world doesn't shrink all at once, it narrows slowly. And that's what makes it so hard to notice. When we don't put words on this moment, it slowly settles into everyday life, not as a shock, not as something alarming, but as something that feels almost reasonable. You begin to organize your life around what feels easier, quieter, more predictable, and at first, it seems like a relief. You avoid situations where you have to concentrate too hard. You choose environments where you won't have to ask people to repeat. You limit the moments where you might feel exposed, unsure, or out of sync. And from the outside, it looks like a personal preference, a lifestyle choice. But inside, something important is shifting. What's really happening is that your world is slowly shrinking around protection. Not because you're weak, not because you've given up, but because you want to preserve your dignity, your image, your sense of control. This is something I want to say very clearly. Withdrawing is not a failure, it's an adaptation. And often, it's a smart one in the short term. You found a way to reduce friction, stress, and emotional fatigue. You did what made sense with what you had. The difficulty is that, over time, this adaptation starts making choices for you, without asking, without announcing itself. You don't consciously decide to step back from life. It just happens little by little. You might notice that you speak less in groups, that you let others lead conversations, that you listen more than you participate, even when you have things to say. And after a while, people around you adjust too. They don't stop caring, but they may stop inviting you into certain moments, assuming it's easier for you that way. This is where many people feel something they can't quite explain, a strange mix of calm and sadness, relief because there's less effort, and grief because something meaningful feels missing. At some point, you may have a moment of clarity. You're present physically, but not fully inside the moment. You hear parts of the conversation, but you don't feel connected to it. You're there, but you're not really part of the flow anymore. And this is the exact moment when reduced hearing becomes a life issue. Not because of sound, but because of what it does to your sense of belonging. Belonging is subtle. It's the feeling that you matter in the room, that your presence counts, that your reactions, your stories, your laughter, your opinions have a place. When that feeling starts to fade, it touches something deep. Your role as a partner, as a parent or grandparent, as a friend, as someone who is seen, valued, and included. This is why so many people feel a quiet fear underneath all of this. Not the fear of hearing less, but the fear of becoming invisible, of slowly disappearing from moments that once gave meaning and joy. And the hardest part is that this shift rarely comes with a clear signal. There is no single event where you can say, this is when everything changed. It's a line you cross without noticing. And by the time you do notice, it can feel like it's already too late. But here is the part one want you to hear most carefully. This threshold is not a point of no return. Recognizing it is not a reason to panic. It's a moment of power. Because when you can name what's happening, you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking that you're lazy, slow, or no longer capable. You start seeing the pattern for what it really is, an emotional and relational response to hearing changes, not a personal flaw. Acting early doesn't mean pushing yourself into situations that feel overwhelming. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about becoming more aware of what's really happening and choosing connection over quiet avoidance in ways that still respect who you are. Sometimes that means making small adjustments that ease the effort. Sometimes it's about communicating a bit more clearly or using different approaches depending on the environment. And at certain moments, it can also mean being supported by people who truly understand what you're going through. This is how you protect what matters most over time: your independence, your sense of who you are, and the simple joy of sharing moments with others. Change doesn't have to be sudden or perfect. It can be gentle, progressive. What matters is staying attentive to these early signals while you still have room to choose before stepping back becomes the only path that feels available. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to explore the other videos on this channel. They're here to help you understand these changes more deeply and to find calmer, more balanced ways to live with them. You're not alone in this, and there is always room for connection, clarity,